Welcome to the Cessna 310. It's the 4th of February. A pretty nice day. I can see beautiful sunshine up ahead of us, and the forecast for our destination airport of Peterborough is sky clear and 9 miles, so that's nice. It's not too cold given the time of year. It's only a couple degrees below freezing. So yeah, Penny is... This is Penny. We're in Penny right now. This is our 1960 Cessna 310D. And she's a really wonderful airplane. Fantastic cross-country machine. Really enjoyable to fly. Like very light on the controls, say compared to like an Aztec or something like that. And sort of very nimble feeling in the air. So good performance. It doesn't quite have the short field takeoff and landing capacity that the Aztec has, but it certainly is a more nimble aircraft to fly, and pretty much everybody I've taken flying in it enjoys being in as a passenger a lot more. So she's got 130 gallons of usable fuel. Main tanks are on the tips. We got 50-gallon tip tanks, and that's our main fuel with 30-gallon aux tanks. That's 15 gallons aside for the auxes and 50 gallons a main. So that's our main fuel supply on board, and that gives you a good amount of range. Right now I'm burning 20.5 gallons an hour total, so that gives us a pretty good range on the fuel that we have in the aircraft. Now, you're going to need a fair bit more experience to fly one of these, especially compared to a single. It's multi-engine, it's retractable, so you need some more ratings. If you do have the experience, though, the insurance can actually be very reasonable, and I'm currently paying less than most 172 owners pay for full insurance on the 172, and it's a fully insured airplane. They're relatively cheap to buy as well, in terms of a upfront ticket value. But you do have to be careful because it's not so much the purchase price that's bad with the twin, it's the maintenance. 2 engines and retractable gear and constant speed props isn't double the cost as a single, it's more like 5 times the cost. So it's obviously something you want in a hangar too. You might be happy to let the 150 sit outside on the ramp, but something this complex, you really do want to sort of protect the propellers, the engines, and everything else. So you add hangar costs, insurance costs, which, you know, you always have the insurance costs, but they could be not too bad. Fuel costs, maintenance costs, and you get some pretty big bills. I think you really need to be prepared to spend $25,000 a year on the airplane to keep it going. I obviously have the benefit of being able to do the maintenance for free, or just, you know, my own time. Parts I still have to buy, but the maintenance can at least be taken care of, and that's a really expensive part of the puzzle. An annual on a 310, just a basic annual, I've heard all sorts of different numbers out there, but, you know, $6,000 for a straightforward basic manual, all the way up to $10,000 for the annual to be done. And it's going to vary again on the model of 310 that you have, and what instruments, what equipment, what engines, is it turbocharged, so on and so forth. But it is an enjoyable plane to fly, but it's definitely something you got to be using it for long distance trips. You know, you don't want to just be flying 30 miles to the next airport for lunch. You want to be going places, and I've been very lucky. I mean, I've worked very hard, very hard, and I put a lot of time into the airplane, but I've been fortunate enough to have the opportunity. You know, I took the airplane all the way down to California and back in September with Paige, and we just had an absolutely wonderful time and met all kinds of fantastic people, and really got to, you know, get the best of the GA world and do some amazing sightseeing and flying along the way. Some of it was stressful, a lot of it was new, but it really was a magical experience. So insurance might not be too bad. Maintenance is going to be heavy, and then you need to leave stuff around for, you know, overhauling propellers. If you're here in Canada, that's every 10 years, and these older ones, you've got to get newer props. So that was an expense that we came up with, is we had props. They only had like 100 hours on them since overhaul. There was 5 years left to the next overhaul time, but they had an AD on them that had to be done every 5 years. And due to lack of parts, mainly some O-rings, my understanding was, I couldn't get the AD dealt with. And not being able to deal with that AD meant no propellers. And I literally had to buy different propellers for the airplane. Hartzell has just changed all of its prices on props. They have really gone up a lot, like anywhere from 30 to 100%, depending on what parts you're buying from them. And so that could be terrible. The compact aluminums that I had looked at getting was 33,000 Canadian dollars when I'd looked at them. Wow. Now, I was fortunate enough that I found a set that had come off of another aircraft that they'd bought new props, done a bunch of work to it, they hadn't even used them, and then decided the engines were junk and the poor airplane got parted out. So, I was lucky in that regard, but if you have to buy propellers for it, it's going to be very pricey. And then, of course, you got big 6-cylinder engines, so there's more maintenance, there's more cost involved with just the general upkeep, but also when it's time for overhaul, that's going to be really steep as well. So, what am I trying to say with the airplane? It's a real joy to fly. I really like having the two engines. The speed, I mean, who doesn't like going fast, but the reliability of the twin is fantastic. But it only exists if you do two things. One, you have to be proficient at flying it and get recurrent training and really work at it and be diligent with it, because it's a very easy airplane to fly, really. But when an engine stops, it becomes incredibly challenging. And there have been a number of incidents recently with 310s. We've had, in the last, I'm going to say 6 months, an R model in Texas unfortunately crashed, maybe in icing conditions that they weren't really expecting. And that was a fatal accident. We had a 1960D model crash. Luckily, that individual was not killed, and it looks like an engine issue. It's still very early in the stages, but I think it was a partial loss of power and a return to the airfield, and maybe then a complete loss of power on that engine, short final that resulted in a stall. I'm thinking potentially some yaw issues and loss of control, but as I said, very early. And another R model crashed after an engine failure with an extremely experienced pilot on board at very high altitude, turning back to the field. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out with that one and what happens. So it's only good if you've got the training and the diligence and practice and keep up on the aircraft. And secondly, you actually have to maintain it, because if you don't look after it and it becomes unreliable, well then you're kind of undoing the whole point. You may as well just have a single-engine airplane that you take very good care of. But if you can do all of that, it's a real beautiful airplane. There's lots of space, lots of baggage room. It's got good, useful load. This model has max takeoff weight of 4,830 pounds. And our empty weight's 3,100 pounds. And you can put 130 gallons of fuel in it. So you can see right away you can put quite a lot of people, baggage, and fuel, and really go somewhere with the airplane. And it is, it's a beautiful airplane to fly. They also do have a combustion heater, just like the Aztecs and many other twins. And so that's something else that you need to maintain and adds additional cost. I just went through the whole airworthiness directive on the one that's in here, and luckily it hasn't got too many hours on it. So, there's still like 500 hours of life left before it needs an overhaul, but definitely want a good pre-purchase inspection doing to determine what the condition of the engines, props, airframe are. Now with that in mind, the 310 has some issues, I guess we could say, with people not doing the gear rigging correctly and problems occurring with the landing gear collapsing and stuff like that. Now anything can break and accidents happen, but obviously if you don't even deal with the rigging, that's not going to work well. So there's a 200-hour rigging procedure that's supposed to be done. Most shops and like the Twin Cessna group will basically say, do it annually and make sure the gear is in spec. And you really need a shop that's done that a few times, or someone who's willing to learn how to do it and maybe give you a bit of a discount on doing it to make sure it's done properly. You don't want that haphazardly done. And that was a problem, I've had with a couple 310s I've looked after, including this one. The gear rigging was all out of spec. The flaps were way out of spec. The flaps were literally, they worked, they went up and down. It took me 17 hours to sort them out, maintenance time, and they were going to tear themselves apart. And it all came from basically someone putting a patch and a doubler in for a crack that then trapped the hinge joint, and then the flap didn't fully retract, and they didn't know what they were doing, so then they shortened the rod to pull it up more, which then put everything else out of spec. And it was an absolute mess. So that's something to be really cautious of. Anyway, thanks for coming along for a bit of a ride and just letting me yammer on about the airplane. It's obviously something I really like, and I've been really fortunate to take care of her for a while and enjoy her. And if you get an opportunity, definitely get out and fly one. It's quite the experience. Everybody I take just really likes it. So stay safe, everyone. Happy tailwinds, and we'll chat with you all soon.